name is Eduardo. I'm super excited to do this again. I have been offline for a long time, but I'm excited because this new series of videos that I'm going to be creating, I'm going to be walking you pretty much from the very beginning of how to create GenAI applications. So we're going to start with, and this is going to be with AWS, right? Maybe later on I will do it with Gemini. But for now, we are going to start with AWS. I'm sorry, my camera is just like the focus of it. It's not the best, but we're going to be starting with that. I'm going to show you from the beginning how we are going to use Python to be able to connect and do SDK calls, all the different things that you're going to be able to do that. And then on each video, we're going to be adding more functionality to it. First, we're going to be doing a little bit of just the interaction between the code and the LLM. Then we're going to add a little bit of RAG. Then we're going to add agents. We're going to add security, observability, and hopefully in a few videos, we're going to have a working app that resembles a lot more what production looks like. Now, for this case, we are going to be using kind of like an imaginary company that has a lot of data around machinery, like construction machines and stuff like that. So we have some documents around that. There is some metrics that we can leverage, and then we're going to start putting it together. We're going to start putting all of that together so we can start talking with LLMs, getting insight into how the machines are operating and what things we can do better to get those machines. Throughout the whole series of videos, I'm going to be telling you what to change if you're going to be using for your own data, what things to look for. And for this, I'm using Python. There is going to be Python SDK that I'm going to be using from the beginning. There is going to be maybe a little bit of JavaScript for some of the UI towards the end. But what we're going to be doing, it's going to be able to get translated into any other SDK that you have, that you feel more comfortable with, like Go or JavaScript or TypeScript. It's totally fine. But for us, we're going to be using Python. I'm going to be uploading all of this to the repo that is on the comments, and you should be ready to be able to start exploring this. So for this session, what we're going to do is we are going to start with just the Amazon Bedrock, just trying to start the interaction because there is a few things that we need to make sure that we have set up properly. Okay, so first and foremost, the thing that we need to do is making sure that we have access to AWS. So we need to have an access key and a secret access key to be able to connect. If you have been using AWS CLI, you can do AWS configure to get those keys in there. If you have used AWS CLI already or you're using it already, awesome. You should be good to go. If you're not sure, you can run AWS. AWS. Let me show you. Why don't we start sharing the screen now? So if you're not completely sure if you have everything set up, something that you can do is you can go and start doing something like AWS. Sorry, not caps. STS. See, I use that a lot, and you'll be able to see here that which account you are connected to. So that's account I'm connected to. I'm able to make a call. Everything looks fine. So I have a brand new file here. I'm going to start, but before I do that, I need to make sure that I have access to the models that I want. So for all of these that I'm going to be doing, it's going to be in the Oregon region. And one of the first things that you're going to do, whether it doesn't matter which region you are, if you are in US East 1 or in US West 2, you need to go to Amazon Bedrock. And in Amazon Bedrock, what you're going to do is, so if you didn't see that, I went through AWS, when you're searching for Bedrock, and here is Amazon Bedrock. And from here, I scroll all the way down and you will see here model access in the configuration. You click on that. And now in here, I have access to all of them. But in your case, you will see modify model access. You click select all the base models if you want to. You don't get charged for any of these. You can just select them and go to next. In this case, there is a modification because I have everything enabled. In your case, if you don't have enabled any of these, you will see that it will tell you, okay, these are all the models that you want to access. You click next, and you are good to go. You'll have access. Like I said, you're not getting charged until you use them. So you can enable all of them and you're going to be totally fine. Okay. So in this case, I have this enabled, which is good to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to switch over to my actual file and we're going to start coding. Okay, we're going to start seeing what is it that we can do here on the coding side. Okay, so first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file. In this case, I'm just giving out names, 01 Bedrock SDK. In your case, it can be completely like whatever it is that you want. But this is what you're going to see in the, what is it called, in the repo. Okay, so once I have that, what's next? Well, I'm using Python. And in my case, I have installed Miniconda. So if you want to install Miniconda, definitely I will recommend it. Go to Miniconda installation. There is steps and you can install it. That allows you to manage the different virtual environments and making sure that you're installing things properly without messing somebody else's project or a different project that you may be working on. So in my case, I have Conda or Miniconda installed. And one of the first things that I'm going to do is I actually going to create a, environment for this project. So I'm just going to call it AWS GenAI app. I'm going to use it with Python 3.12 and I'm going to install it. That's going to just install some of the basic packages. I'm using Miniconda because it has only the base packages instead of the full Anaconda that has a lot of other packages that we don't necessarily use. Miniconda is a little bit smaller, keeps everything a little bit cleaner in the package side of things for Python. Okay, so I have this. Everything is good to go. The next thing that I'm going to do is conda activate AWS GenAI, and that's going to activate my GenAI app. Sorry, as you can see here, it was using the base Miniconda environment. Now I have AWS GenAI app. Okay, perfect. I'm going to clear this. I have my environment ready. I have everything ready. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is create the file. Now you can see here the file is a little bit a different extension, is IP. This allows me to do a Jupyter Notebook type of file. If you have not used Jupyter Notebook, you will see why I like it, because you can run discrete pieces of code at any time as you are making modifications without having to run the entire script. And you're going to take a look at it. But if you're using Visual Studio, it's easy enough to create a file with this file extension, and then you will have this functionality kind of like a Jupyter Notebook. And so you don't have to create the entire file all at once. You can start step by step. And I really like this for coding, initial coding when I'm exploring things, because it allows me to quickly test things without having to write the whole thing of the script, have to run it, and then make modification, have to run the entire thing again. So you will see what I mean, because in here, I'm going to go ahead and create a code. And we're going to import our library, import Boto3. Now, I know there is going to be a few errors that are going to throw, because first of all, Boto3 is not installed. We need to install it. And the second thing is that, so it's asking me to select a kernel or an environment. So I'm going to select the environment that I just created. The next thing that it's asking me is that I need to have IPY kernel installed. This is a specific package that allows me to kind of like create a session, me running different pieces of code without losing the history or the memory of what has been created. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Now, I have been having an issue with my Visual Studio where it's saying, hey, it's installing, but actually nothing happens. So the other thing that you can do is just a pip install an IPY kernel. So right now, everything is going to get installed into that environment that I created earlier. And so that's kind of like what's going on there. Once it is installed, the other thing is that I know that Photo 3 is not part of my packages. So what I need to do here is that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install that package too. Pip install Photo 3. Now, it's always good practice as soon as you're installing things. Let's create a requirements file because this will allow us to keep track of the packages that we are installing, so IPY kernel, and that are needed to run our code to make sure everything is running. So I have created requirements.txt, have all of the two packages that I have installed, and then I can come back to my file, and I'm gonna go ahead and run this. As you can see, it run. So now it is available, like it's available for the rest of the code that I can run. Okay, so now what? Well, I need to create a client. And for that, I need to reference the Boto3 SDK. So normally what I do is I come to the Amazon documentation and I look for Bedrock. Go ahead and look for Bedrock. Now I'm gonna show you the first one. So this is Bedrock here. Now keep in mind, Bedrock has 6 different clients. So the basic one is Bedrock. And as you can see here, this is going to manage the service itself. So create an inference profile, create a guardrail, create an evaluation job, create a prompt router. And I mean, you don't need to know what those means right now. As we are building our application, we're going to touch on them. But you will see here that really is not about communicating with a specific model. Get custom model, but it's not invoking the model. So this is to manage this endpoint, this client, Bedrock service, is to manage the service itself. You will notice here that there is another one, which is Bedrock Runtime. It has a little bit less kind of like options, but these ones allow you to apply a guardrail, to converge, or to invoke the model. There is a couple of other ones that definitely we will use as we build our application. Now, this one is called Bedrock Runtime. So there is Bedrock to manage the services, the access of the models, and the different things that you can create within Bedrock. And then Bedrock Runtime to interact with those services like models, like Guardrail. Now, Bedrock also has agents. Similar to what we just saw with Bedrock and Bedrock Runtime, we have agents for Bedrock and the agents for Bedrock Runtime. And here is where you will create a rack system, a knowledge base, an agent, and do all of these different things that you can create it with the agents for Bedrock. Agent for Bedrock Runtime, you are interacting with the services with an agent, with a knowledge base, and things like that. Okay? Now, there is also data automation for Bedrock and runtime for Bedrock data automation. Why they don't have the same format as everything else, don't ask me. It's AWS. They tend to do this. They follow a certain format for certain things and then all of a sudden switch. But data automation allows you to create jobs where you are making modifications of data. Now, you can make modifications. I like to keep that completely separate into an ETL pipeline and use different services like Glue, maybe in the database, Redshift, or Athena. But you can also use this in data automation for Bedrock. It does allow you to make some changes, and we will explore those as we build the application so you can see what are the capabilities of this service. But similar to the other, data automation for Bedrock allows you to create the jobs. Runtime for Bedrock data automation is to be able to interact with it, right? So it's a little bit different. So which one are we going to start to use? Well, we're going to start with Bedrock because there is a few things that we need to get started with. So let's go ahead and just create a client. So I have this. I'm just going to go ahead. You know what? I'm going to be using this for quite a bit. So I'm going to put it into my right. And this one, I'm going to put it on my left. I can reference it often. So I'm going to create my client. Good. My client is created. And now, one of the first things that I want to see is what models do I have access to and the information of these models. So normally when I do that is you will see here that I can come here and I can list models. And so one of the things that I'm going to look here is list foundation models. Now you can create your own like custom models for like based on specific models, but we are not going to do that right now. What we're going to do is going to list the foundation models that we have available because we need to have certain information from it, the model ID or the model IRN. So those two things are the things that we need to one of the two, either the model ID or the model IRN, in order to be able to start interacting with it. Okay. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna put it in my cell here, and I'm gonna be okay. You can do it by provider. You can do it by the customization type. If I can do fine tuning, continue pre-training with the model or distillation, or by output modality. If it's text, image, embedding, now there are models with video, so this should be updated with also the video output, and whether the inference type is on demand or provision. So provision allows you to have a certain amount of throughput, a special amount of throughput, and being able to have that dedicated for you. Whether on demand, you are sharing the resources with others. Now, that doesn't mean that they can see what you're sending or that AWS can see what you're sending. There is no security concern in that. You're just sharing the GPUs. And so AWS by default doesn't log any of that information. You can log it in your own account. And we are going to do that later on so you can see what's going on there. And you can see how the model is interacting. But there is nothing that AWS, or if you're using a third party model like Anthropic, that they are going to see. So all of that is safe. This means that you're only having a certain bandwidth to be able to make all these invocations. And normally you will use provision when you are in production and there is a massive amount of communication that you're sending back and forth with the LLM. Okay. So these all are optionals. So what I can do is I can remove all of them and I can run my piece of code. And now I have the response. So what I'll do is I'll use preprint because it makes it a little bit easier. Preprint has been turned off. So let me. We saw that. Okay. From preprint import preprint. Okay, that should turn it on. And you can see here now it's giving me a lot of information, right? So there is a lot of metadata on top of it, but then I have the model summaries here. And these model summaries, I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger to the side so we can see it a little bit better. You'll see that it has the model IRN, the model ID, some of the things, additional information that we can use. Now, I know that I'm looking for a model called Nova Lite, which is from Amazon. You can see here there is Mistral, and there is a bunch of other ones in here. Now, there is Meta as well. So there is a lot of data here. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit easier on me. So the provider, I'm gonna go with Amazon. Now I don't know if Nova Lite allows you to do any of that, but the output I know is text. Okay, and the inference is going to be on demand. And this is what I like about doing this in this type of Jupyter notebook type, because I didn't have to run the entire thing. I'm just running this particular cell with the modifications. And now I have this one already, so I can rerun it. And so what you can see here is that, okay, I have certain models like Titan. That's not what I'm looking for. Novasonic, great model for speech to speech. But I also looking for Nova Micro. This is the smallest model of an LLM that Nova has and Amazon has, but also Nova Lite. Perfect. So I have these two. They have Nova Lite, and I have my model IRN and model ID. So I'm gonna copy these. I'm gonna copy these. Now, by default, I know that I'm connecting to US West 2, and that's just because the way I set up my credentials when I was setting up my AWS CLI. And you will see here that my model IRN, I'm just going to remove this so I can use it as a variable. My model IRN is referencing the model in US East 1. And that is because not all models are deployed in all regions. The models are deployed in certain regions. And so can we still access them? Yes, you can still access them, even though you may be in a different region. And to be able to do this, I'm in US West 2, and this model is in US East 1. How can I access it? Well, it's very easy. I can just add US to the beginning, and then this will reference the model inference profile. And the model inference profile says, hey, I want to access this model no matter which region is deployed to. And then you'll be able to inference that. So that is called an system inference profile. When you are using this as us.amazon.nova, because then it's going from one region to another region. And that is by default. That is already being created by Amazon. I'm going to show you something else that you can do later on to create your own profiles. But for now, you're in this. If you're in Europe, this will be EU. But for us in North America, you will use it as US. Now, what are we going to do? Okay, we have the model IRN, the model ID. Okay, now how are we going to do the invocation? Now, remember, this is only for creating, we are listing the models available to us, but there is no model invocation here. What we're going to do is here, we're going to go to, Bedrock runtime. Now here in Bedrock runtime, we have invoke model and converse. There was a time where these two made a difference. The models will respond slightly different to these ones. But nowadays, the models actually don't have a different response for these ones. The converse model, I like it a little bit more because it gives you more standardization across the models versus the invoke model. There's a few more changes that you need to do. Now, why were those inputs being different? Well, when LLMs came out first, they were not fine-tuning this conversation type where you ask a question, it gives you answer, question, it gives you answer. They were not fine-tuned for that type of interaction. What they were created for originally was just to continue the text. So if you were to ask a question, the model will just continue as if it didn't know how to answer, it just continued that question. It can be an answer, it can be another question, it can be something else. It can be random. And that's what invoke model did. It was just telling the model, hey, continue this text. And converse, it gave it the instruction of like, hey, I want you to have a conversation. It's going to be back and forth. So these were all the original LLMs when they came out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in the system. Nowadays, all of them do the same thing. It's the conversation. They've been fine-tuned to have this conversation. Whether I invoke the model or whether I use converse, there is not going to be a difference in my answer. However, the parameters and how it is built, definitely there is a difference on that. So I'm going to, let's go back. I'm going to take a look at the invoke model. And so you can see here, the invoke model requires a body, which is in bytes or file, content, accept. This is similar to an HTTP call or an API call. There is content accept is an application JSON or accept application JSON. The model ID, which we already have, whether I want to trace enable, disable, or enable full, this is just to keep an eye. What is the model doing? Give me any information on how the model is thinking. If, for example, we are using a recent model like Sonnet 3.7, and if I want to use a guardrail identifier, guardrail version, these guardrails are to be able to verify the input of the user as well as to verify the output. There is a lot of rules that you can put in there. We are going to touch on those ones because those are great for security. And then finally, performance configuration latency, standard or optimized. Now, this is on the invoke side. Now, if I want to go and I go to the converse, now the converse gives me, okay, I can send a message, but it allows me to do all of this, have a role, the content. I can send images if my model supports image input, documents, video. This is if my model supports them. If I send a document to a model that doesn't support it, I'm going to get an error. But you can see that this is more standardized. All of these will need to be input into the invoke model, into the body, and then I have to go and take a look at to what that actually means for each of the models. Versus in the converse, I can already input that as a standard. So that's what I meant that it's a little bit easier to handle this and test the different models because it's a standard. You have all of this, you have a tool use, a tool result, and we will explore those ones later on. Right now, I just want to start chatting with my model. Again, you have guardrails, cache, reasoning content. So you have a lot of more options to choose from here. You also have a system prompt, right? So I can define a system prompt if I want to, my inference configuration, and the tool configuration. So there is a lot of different information in here. Now, there is still a few things that need to be changed depending on the model, because not every model will accept the information in the same format. And that is why here in the parameters, you will see that there is information supporting models and features for Converge. So you can take a look at that and see how they are how those features need to be formatted for that model. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And you can see here, you can see the models that support Converge into that format. And I mean, this is Nova. We're going to be using Nova Lite, which I know for sure that it is possible. So Nova, Amazon Nova Lite. Amazon Nova Lite, sorry. So you can see here, this is Amazon Nova Lite. There is a lot of different Nova models in here. But one of the things that I like is that I can go here and I can go and start the invoke model using the API. And what it does is it gives me some examples of of code that I can leverage. Okay, so why don't we use this? We're gonna do this. Let's import JSON because I haven't imported. I have my model ID. Let's import JSON. That's good. And then I'm gonna do my client. Now this is gonna override the client that I have before because the client that I have before is the Bedrock client. I'm not gonna use it anymore right now. And now is a Bedrock runtime. Ideally, I will use something like this, so that I can differentiate it between client of Bedrock alone and client runtime. So I can do that. Now I'm gonna create my system. Now you don't have to have a system prompt if you don't want to. In this case, it's very useful and it's also always recommended to have it. So you can give it a role of how you want your model to act. In this case, it's a very short system prompt. You can make it bigger. You can give it very specific parameters. So in this case, I'm gonna give this, you're a helpful assistant. And then I'm gonna create my message. So in this case, I have a role, which is the user, and my content is text. Now, if you remember the bottom 3 documentation, I can add images, I can add video, I can add documents. So you can add a lot of different things here. In my case, I'm just starting simple text, a short story about dragons. So I'm gonna create that variable there, and then I'm gonna go to my infer parameters, so my inference parameters. So maximum tokens, how many tokens I want the model to respond with. My top P, which is the amount, the size of the vocabulary that I want the model to consider in order to be able to give me a response. That's kind of like the basic answer to that. The higher this top P, the more words it will consider. The lower or closer to zero, the smaller that word dictionary that it will be able to consider. Temperature. A temperature can be from 0 to 7, 8, 9, 10. Normally, you will see it go from 0 to 1. That's kind of like the standard now. But basically, what it means is that how creative is I want the response to be. If it's 0, it's not going to be as creative. It's going to stay to the facts. But if it's 1, it's going to be very creative. So in this case, I wanted to write a short story. So I wanted to be very creative. So I'm going to allow it to use a lot of different words so you can use very creative words. And also, I'm going to instruct it to be very creative with a temperature close to 1. So I have run that. Perfect. And then there is additional model request fields, and this is top K. Top K reference a little bit similar to top P. There is a difference on that. I'm not going to get into this top K too much. It's very rare that you need to modify it. I'm not going to even include it into my request. But I do copy the rest, which is my model response. Remember, this client referenced the Bedrock one, not the Bedrock runtime, because we changed it. So I'm just going to change it to Bedrock runtime. And then I'm going to do converse my model ID, which is US Amazon Nova Lite V1, which is the same thing that I have before here. So I can just use my variable that I had before. So I'm going to do model ID. I have my messages. This is a variable that I had already defined here, messages. This is the system, which also the variable, my inference parameter, but I did not add additional model request field, so I'm going to remove that part. Now, you may have seen me already run these cells because they have this check mark and they have a number on the left. Now, how do you run the cells? Well, you click on this and then you can click on the stop if you want to, but you will see a run when there is a number, there is a check mark, and how long it took to run. Now, similar to what I had done before, I'm going to do print and I'm going to do a model response. Okay. So it's going to respond with all of these. Now, what did I do there? You didn't see me click on that. Well, that's what I like about this kind of like format for Python, is that I can just type Shift Enter and it will run the cell or the code that is in that cell. And then it's going to add another cell right below. Okay. So in this case, it's going to give me a response with metadata. That's great. That's awesome. What I'm looking for is the output. Inside my output, there is a message, there is a content, and the content has text. Now, you can imagine if you're creating an image with a different model, then you will get an image here. Each model, family of models will return the output in different formats. So you need to take a look at that, okay? So it's not gonna always be this format. So you have to take a look at that, but all of them is gonna respond with JSON. That's a good thing. So in this case, I have the text, I have all this information, fantastic. It's quite long. I'm just gonna enable a scroll element here so I can go back and scroll a little bit. And you can see here, it's telling me the amount of input. So this is the request, the amount of input tokens, 11. The output tokens is 300. And the total tokens, of course, is going to be 311, the sum of these two. So it's quite useful to be able to get this data because you can keep track of how much you're spending. You do have access to this data in CloudWatch and being able to access that information there. Okay, so now how am I going to be able to actually use this information? Well, I can access the JSON. And in this case, it will be model response, output, message, content. And you can see here, okay, what does this mean? Well, this is JSON. I'm accessing, and because it's JSON, this is going to be a dictionary. So I'm accessing the key output. But this one has another dictionary, which is message. I'm going to access the message key, which has another dictionary because of the curly brackets. And so I'm going to access the content. But now this one is not a dictionary because it's a bracket here at the beginning that tells me it's a list. And so I need to access the first element of the list. And then that element is going to be a dictionary again, which is text is the key of that dictionary. So that's what we're doing here. um, accessing dictionary, accessing dictionary, accessing dictionary, accessing the first element of the list, finally accessing the text in that element as the dictionary. So I can type it here and look at that. That looks a little bit better. Now, normally what you will have is that this will be also going into a variable, right? Output text, and then it will be that, but basically it's the same thing. Output, and then off it goes. Now, I will challenge you to change this information, to make modifications to this, to try different things, to play around with top bit, temperature, and see how it goes. Maximum token, see how that helps, but also the system prompt. Change the system prompt for something else. Make it fun, make it different, and test it out. Now, you may think like, okay, isn't that what I can already do with like going to the console or with ChatGPT? Yes, to a degree. Because a lot of things now that we're doing this through code is that now you can get data from somewhere else and add it to your prompt. So, for example, write a short story about dragons, and then all of a sudden I'm getting this other piece from somewhere else that says like that talks about X or Y or Z. Or for example, if I have metrics, I can access them from with a Python code and then tell it, hey, can you help me analyze all this data that I retrieved? And you'll be able to do so. So in the last year and a half, I have deployed about 15, 12 to 15 GenAI applications to production with different customers, different use cases. Some of them have been agentic. So we use agents to access data. Some of them have been RAG. Some of them have been both agent and RAG. And some of them are just doing this. Having code access API calls, retrieve data, and then parse it, not only through one, but to multiple LLMs to get the output that we are looking for analysis. So knowing this is not just trivial. It will help you create analysis and create really great content that can be useful based on other data. But for now, this is our first step. We are able to start conversing with LLMs. Now, our next step, now that we have this sorted out and what Bedrock Bedrock SDK methods we're going to be using, now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about our application with these construction machines and how we're going to do about it. So our next session is going to be a little bit of design. We are going to do code and we're going to do a vector database. And we're going to start uploading some content so that we can start retrieving data from these documents. But right now, you can actually retrieve data with Python and inject it into this code as part of the variable, right? So you can do this as a format f, and I can say like, you know what? If I'm able to retrieve this data, I can tell it analyze the following data for insights. Very simple. I mean, you probably will have a lot more creativity in doing that. It's giving me an error because I don't have that variable defined yet, but you can see here, I can run that and it will give me insight into that. And that's what we're going to be doing a little bit more about it next in our rack system. And we're going to start exploring some other options like agents later on. So I hope you had fun. This is just a starting point. Remember what you need to do. Model activation through the UI. You cannot activate them through the Bedrock SDK. But go through this code, play around, make changes, find other providers, find Anthropic or Mistral or Cohere, see what is available, check out what models are available, and then we're gonna play around with them. Okay? You are getting charged by how many tokens you're using. So be mindful of that. Depending on your budget, it may not be an issue. Really, these models right now are very quite cheap because and that's why I like Nova Lite to start with because it's from Amazon and they make it very, very accessible and very cheap to be able to run these workloads. So play around with them, check different things, check the pricing. I'm going to have a link to the pricing of the models because there is new models and it changes. So I don't want to give you just static data right now over the call, but you will be able to see how much you are spending if even it's that much. Right now, I probably spend in this call 0.00002 cents on doing this. So it's not a lot. So play around with it, take a look, and see what else you can do. If you have questions, let me know. We're happy. See you in our next video where we're going to start actually designing our applications to get insight into the construction machines and the performance of these machines. Hope you have fun. See you later.